the body doesn't know what's real and what's not real. It has no idea. It connects with the mind. And so what the mind does, the body responds, right? So that's why you can have orgasms while you're sleeping. Men have wet dreams,
Yeah.
right? It's the mind. It has nothing to do with the body. The
Yeah.
body's just along for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once you start to tap into controlling those thoughts and controlling your breath and controlling your expectations, then it starts to shift everything within the body.
Yeah. I'm Cindy Darnell, and welcome to The Erotic Philosopher, the podcast where we examine and explore sex and relationships through social, cultural, political, and other lenses, and find some ways to explore some very diverse erotic quandaries. Today's guest is the fabulous Ali Duncan, visibility coach and spiritual guide to healing, discovering, and creating a life that is abundant, aligned, and present. Over the last 16 years, Ali has evolved her life experience to give her the knowledge and support with which she now guides others on their own individual path. Ali likes to challenge everyday beliefs, question thoughts, and witness the healing of others to rewrite the roles they have chosen to play. Enjoy this discussion with Ali Duncan. Welcome to The Erotic Philosopher.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited about being here. I'm excited about you and what we're going to talk about.
I'm really excited about being here and being here with you. And the reason that I invited you onto the show was because we met about 3 years ago at a tantric retreat. And it was, you and I had quite the connection immediately. And I've been following you on Instagram ever since. And I've watched you kind of build your new business and build this new brand. And the work that you're doing has really engaged and excited me. And I wanted to invite you to, have a deeper conversation with you about all of this, and also to catch up with you because you're just a delight to talk to. So I am thrilled that we've made this time here. And so for people who have never met you, who don't know anything about you, and who can't see you, which is their loss because you are stunningly beautiful, how would you introduce yourself to people who've never met you before and who would be interested in your work?
That I am, Ali Duncan, and that I am an energetic healer. And then that opens up the dialogue to what does that mean? And then there's such a huge range of energy and how to apply it to the body, which includes from breath work all the way to touch and everything in between. Yeah.
And you haven't always worked in this space.
No, I haven't. I like to say that I reinvent myself every few years. And so I started out as a police officer for 10 years. And that was...
I just find that amazing that you go from being a cop to being an energy healer, sensual, erotic teacher. That just...
Yeah,
that blows my mind. So how does that, how? Well, I can't even speak. I love this story so much. How does it happen?
Well, the fun thing is I was doing them both simultaneously, right? Tantra came a little later in life, but as far as the energy work, I was doing them while I was a police officer. So I got hired in 2003 for a police department, and I met the lady who introduced me into Reiki in 2004. And so we became really close friends. She worked in records, and I was obsessed with energy work and everything that it offers. So I did a deep dive. I got my level 1 Reiki, level 2, level 3, and then I started practicing on anybody at the police department who would allow me to mess with their energy. So, and then I started getting clients. So I would be on patrol. And then after patrol, if I worked days or nights, I would see clients. And then on my days off, I would see clients to do energy.
Wow. And did you find it challenging? Because I imagine the skills you need are quite different, or maybe they're not. I mean, how did you, for the time that you were, had one foot on each side of the professions, how did you manage that?
I am telling you, between energy work and yoga, like that kept me so calm while being a police officer, because understand, a police officer, we're trained to escalate first. And then when you get to the scene, then you de-escalate. So your adrenals are constantly going because it's always worst case scenario when you get called to a case, to a call. And then when you get there, then if it's not what you think it is, then you can start to de-escalate. So having yoga and energy work as another part of my life played a huge part in keeping me grounded and not so much in my head, and really helping with the stress and anxiety that comes with being a police officer.
And how long did you do the law enforcement work?
10 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
That is a long time. Every time it's like, that's a really long time. I mean, my husband was in it for 20 plus years. So I'm just like, 10 years is enough for me.
And so he doesn't do it anymore either.
Yes and no. He has his own consulting company.
Okay.
And so he travels and he teaches SWAT movement to agencies. So he's still involved, but he's not a part of the actual law enforcement as far as work goes.
So the transition from law enforcement across, I mean, I see that you sort of were doing both of them simultaneously. And then what was the deciding factor that helped you give up police world and move into kind of energy and Tantra world?
So I went to India. My sergeant gave me the summer off, and I didn't think he would, so that was a surprise. And I went to India for 7 weeks, and I studied yoga and breath work. And India is such a central place, like the sounds and the smells.
The smells are what gets me. Like it's such a visceral place. It's funny, you know, because I mean, I don't know if people who are from India who are listening, but if you've never been to India, it's quite unlike any other place in the world, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, it is true. You either love it or hate
you can't be indifferent about India. You're either right in, or you're like, oh my God, this is the worst place ever. And again, no offense to folks who are listening from India. I think it's one of the most remarkable countries on the planet. And it's, oh my God, it's for a non-Indian person, for someone who hasn't grown up there, it's very confronting.
It's my favorite place. I've been there a couple of times since I went and got my yoga training. If I could move there, I would be there. Like, yes. So I get back from India, and it was just such a different feel. And a lot of things were just shifting within the department. We got a new chief, and we didn't click at all. I didn't like his energy, nothing about him. And so I just quit.
Wow.
So 6 months after I got home from India, I just quit, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I knew I could teach yoga or build up my client base for energy work and coaching. So yeah, that was the big transformation. So it was all India.
You know, in the work that I know of you is more at the sexual end of the spectrum, doing, you know, teaching about how to integrate sexuality and how to integrate, you know, pleasure into your life and using pleasure to create the kind of life that you want. I know that now, as a part of the broad range of work that you do, that you've got a particular focus on working with women of color. Talk us through, you know, what that work is and how it's sort of unfolding for you now, having gone from that past extraordinary heady experience through to now a very sensual and somatic.
So I got into Tantra a few years ago. It was probably 4 years ago. And that really opened my eyes. So you had Reiki opened my eyes, and then Tantra opened my eyes to another level as far as like sexual energy, like what it does, how it can heal the body, how we use it to create. And I just got sucked in. So I just immersed myself into Tantra and Tantra teachings. And then most of my clientele, because of where I live, is all white. It's always been that way. Fort Collins was all white. I was the first Black female officer ever in Fort Collins. Wow. And then and I'm the first Black female yoga owner in Colorado. Like, that's how white we are.
In all of Colorado?
In all of Colorado, yeah.
Gosh, I've never been to Colorado.
Yeah, it's
but it sounds like my people are very well represented there, so I won't come and interfere with your vibes.
You are well represented here. But so then just everything just started to shift, that I know this information. I'm a Black woman. And so I feel it's up to me to share this with the Black community and to start teaching Black women to how to heal their sexuality, to heal sexual trauma. And I mean, we're starting at the basics, like just simple touch, like on your arm, right? And connecting it with your breath, just doing simple routines like that is, it's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I get it. I understand it because of all of the stories we have around sexuality, especially the Black community. But how it's just shifted me over the last few years, it's like, I really want to share it, because if Black women can tap into that power, that sexual
Yeah.
energy, then oh my gosh, it's going to be
Mm.
insane. And you see some of them, right? You see some of them who are
Yeah.
entertainers that are just so comfortable in their sexuality, and they're just like
Yeah.
basically ruling the world. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so before we kind of dig into more about, the benefits and the effects of why, for women of color, it's important to be able to tap into that knowledge and that power around sexuality. What are some of the most common things that women of color in particular will experience as challenges around their sexuality that the work you offer could help them sort of heal and unpack and move through?
Mostly shame.
Yeah.
Shame and guilt is a huge thing in the Black community, that it's not okay to be a certain way, to say certain things, to move your body a certain way. I have this group of older women, and it's my silver mat yoga, and they're all Black. And so when we do dancing, I have them, or movements for yoga, and I have them put their hands on their hips and like sway their hips, like all of them are uncomfortable.
Oh,
And I'm just like, ladies, we have to move this
yeah.
area. So shame and guilt, man, that is the biggest
Yeah.
block for women of
Mhm.
color.
And so in terms of, the embodiment of the shame and the guilt, so you mentioned that the hips can get really stiff. For folks who are listening, obviously women of color in particular, what other ways might it manifest in their lives? How might they recognize that this is something that, could be affecting them when they're not even sure that that's what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. It can manifest in like cysts and growths in the ovaries, right? Because that's unmetabolized emotions.
Uh-huh.
And if you think of the uterus, that's like a huge holding compartment for the body to store unmetabolized emotions
Yeah.
into it. So you can get cysts in the ovaries and the uterus. And then as far as life experiences, you can just be in abusive relationships or toxic relationships and just cycle.
Mm.
That's a form of not embodying your sexuality, because sexuality is
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
It is that
Yeah.
self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so shame and guilt, I mean, they're no small things. Like they're pretty intense kind of, really intense kind of feelings. What kind of things, so when Black women or women of color first encounter this sort of work, and you said, it can be really hard for folks sometimes when they first experience this. How does that difficulty, how can that manifest, and why is it worth persevering despite the difficulty that it might bring?
The breakthroughs are amazing. And so when we talk about sexuality and sensuality, intimacy with yourself, I start with the basics, like tell me something that you love about your body. And then
That's
tell
nice.
me something that you don't like about your
Right.
body. And then I always, within all my workshops, I have us dance and
Mm-hmm.
move, right?
Mm.
And it's like so uncomfortable, but I try to make it fun for
Yeah.
them. And then at the end, I have them write a letter to their future self.
Ah.
And so then it's just, and I mean, usually everybody cries
Hmm.
because it's just a release. And so that type of release through dancing, through shaking, through writing, through verbalizing helps to start move that trauma through the body. And then people feel lighter and they get through it, and it's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable. But on the other side, they're just like, okay, that felt really good. And then they start making little changes to honor themselves and their
Yeah.
body and their
Yeah.
sensuality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how have you seen the effects of this? Because I mean, I know how powerful this kind of work can be. The effects of this starting to then ripple through, families and partners and relationships. And for me, one of the ways that when I first started doing work of this caliber, I started noticing that I started making really different decisions about the people who I was dating and the people who I wanted in my life, and how I dressed and where I wanted to live, like things that were really quite profound. Have you noticed that that sort of has that flow on effect as well?
Yes. The cool thing about that is when I do workshops, some of the ladies will choose to do one-on-ones with me. And so like coaching and energy work. And the feedback I get from them is mostly how they talk to themselves. So they're
Ah,
picking different verbiage for themselves, not talking down to their body if they don't like a part of their body, but to use different
yeah.
words, how to describe
Mm,
themselves or the feelings that come with, I'm in this body for now and I'm going to love it.
mm,
And so that's the biggest shift
Yeah.
that I've noticed. And then hopefully, just because they feel different about themselves and now they're acting different to their family members and they're seeing, the relationships differently. It can shift really fast for people if they're in it and their frequencies shift. And then, like anything, it can be work. It can take time.
For people who are listening, who are thinking, I want to get a little bit of this, what could be some little introductory ways that they could start doing this to just get a sense of the power of how this might work in their lives?
I like to start everybody out with something simple like breath work. So circle breath. So breathing in through your mouth and out through your mouth and just circling it. But then the uncomfortableness comes when you start to sigh. So you inhale and then, right. So that sound, right. And then you start filling up your arm, right. And you're doing that same breath and that same sound. And then really start to notice like what comes up. And if it is embarrassment, if it is shame, if it is guilt, whatever, sit with it. And automatic writing is such a powerful tool where you just put your pen to paper and start writing and just let whatever needs to come up, right? And then be okay with it. Like my mom told me, that sound was not acceptable. And because it is going to be something that has to do with trauma being blown into you from other people around you. That's all it is. It's just stories and trauma, whether it's from religious establishment, from society, whatever it is, that's all it is. And it's just being okay with it, whatever, if it's a sound, if it's a type of touch, and just really working through it. And it's powerful because once you release that from your body, then you will feel lighter and freer and more confident in yourself, for sure.
The relationship between healing trauma and healing sex and doing this sort of body-based energy work is just so crucial. And I think more and more, there's more talk certainly in the traditional psychotherapeutic fields about the relationship of the body to trauma. But there's not a lot of talk, interestingly, in the therapy world about pleasure. And that's something that I know is very special to you, the whole pleasure element. So thinking about pleasure, what role do you see that pleasure has in our lives, especially living in a society that's quite scared of pleasure? Why should we pursue it?
Oh, so pleasure is the highest frequency. So I deal with frequencies, right? So the highest frequency is joy and pleasure. And it's a high vibrating frequency, right? That's where the universe is, because pleasure, we expand, right? We open up. And so if you have trauma, that's a heavy, low, slow vibrating frequency, right? Sluggish. And if you can access pleasure, it shifts your frequencies. And so this down here starts to go away. So the more that you access pleasure, and pleasure could simply be really feeling the sun on your face and just like, just being like, that's pleasure. Because so when we hear pleasure, we're just like, oh, is it sexual?
Right. Everybody's thinking of orgasms and lacy underwear. And
yes, but you can stand in the sun in your lacy underwear.
you absolutely
and
can.
It in. So then you've got, so then you can pleasure stack.
Pleasure stack. I love it.
So simple things like the sun, right? Your favorite food, like really sitting and be, that's all pleasure. That shifts your frequency and that holds space for your body to start to heal. So the more that you can access pleasure and joy, the faster you're going to start healing and burning through that trauma. We don't have to sit down and talk about our trauma. We don't have to discuss it. Like we can shift it within our bodies. And then when we do talk about it, we find that, oh, it's not that intense. It doesn't have such a hold on me because I'm accessing pleasure a lot throughout the day, right? So that's why perfumes and scents and candles, all those things, your plants, like all of that is, they're all healing and they're all joyful. They're all pleasurable.
So, I really hear what you're saying, that pleasure can be found in so many things in life. It doesn't have to be explosive, tantric, multi-orgasmic orgasms. It can be as simple as, smelling cookies in the oven or feeling hand lotion on your hands. And that I think, we tend to sort of go so overboard with the sex thing being this huge thing. And I wonder, I'm interested what you think about this. Do we tend to overblow sex as being a main event because we're so removed from sensuality in our daily lives that we don't have access to pleasure, to these really kind of mundane sort of pleasures. We're always waiting for this really explosive, amazing thing, that we're not paying attention to the little things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you would just take the time, like take genitals out of the equation and just give your partner a touch massage, right? And just really focus on like each part of their body, right? That's pleasure. Because believe it or not, some people don't find pleasure in sex. And if you haven't worked through your trauma, then you're actually re-traumatizing yourself. So then it's just everybody to get, in tuned with who they are and what feels comfortable, and then find other areas of pleasure. Like it doesn't have to be intercourse. We're so, yeah, you're right. We are so just honed into, and there's other erotic zones in the body.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, explore your body. Like what feels good.
Yeah.
There's not just one.
Yeah. And do you find, so working again, with the community of women that you work with, say there's women listening who experience discomfort in their genitals, either pain, on one hand, or numbness is another one, certainly, that I encounter in my professional work, that there are women who are like, I just don't feel anything. And, they've been to a doctor and the doctor's like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. There's all the tests are fine, which, that happens all the time.
Right.
And then they would be then potentially looking at doing some sort of energy healing work around this, some sort of, pleasure enhancing work around this. What kinds of things would you encourage a woman who's experiencing, pain that has no obvious cause? The doctors are like, no, nothing, there's nothing wrong with you, but is she still feeling it? Or, at the other end where there's numbness and she just can't feel anything when she touches herself or her partner touches. How would you work with a condition like that?
So obviously there's some type of disconnect.
Yeah.
And so finding out what that disconnect is, and then rerouting or rewriting the story around the genitals. And so there's so many ways to do that. So there's emotional freedom technique. So the tapping, and I tap with a lot of my clients just to get it out of the body. And then, like start to dig, like, why don't you want to feel, right? What is that? Where does that story come from? And then even and for a lot of people, like, it's not a big deal to them. And so finding other places, right? So, and we think, so let's talk about kink, where feet turn people on, right? They have a foot fetish and there's like, I don't care about your yoni. Let me see your feet.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the same thing. Like, what other part of your body brings you joy and pleasure until in the meantime, because pleasure again is everything. In the meantime, while we're working through healing any type of disconnect with the lower part of the body, right? The lower sacral chakra and the root chakra, to start bringing energy back into that. And have you heard of Foria? It's a product.
Yes. Explain it to folks who may not know what it is, though.
So Foria is based here in Colorado in Boulder, and it is for women only, and it is THC and CBD products, and it's suppositories. And I love all their products. So they have topical lube, which brings all the blood to the area that you put it on. And so for women who do have those issues as far as pain, the CBD is wonderful. Like, I read all of their testimonials. And then the THC helps to pull blood to that area. So for people who are feeling numbness, so researching some type of products that can help with the physical in conjunction with the emotional, the mental, to heal it. And so, so Foria their products are fantastic.
Very good. Yeah, no, I've seen them, on social media, but I haven't tried any of them myself. But I had read about CBD and THC based product. That some of the research was saying women who used products that were of all kinds, not just topical ointments, but taking capsules and eating it and smoking, I guess, and they do tend to have more sensorial experiences in their bodies, that there's something about it that actually helps you with embodiment, which it makes sense to me that it
Absolutely.
would.
Yeah, and it's plant medicine.
Yeah.
Right. And plant medicine is healing. Yes, we do abuse plant medicine, but it is plant medicine with essential oils and herbs that do help heal, because all of those three things have healing properties to them.
Do you teach other genders? Do you teach other kinds of people these sorts of techniques?
I do. We have lots of Tantra classes. Well, we used to. They're kind of on Zoom now, but not in person. But we would do couples, right? So we do couples, and we have, it's called Good Touch with for Tantra,
Uh-huh.
and it's just exploring different types of touch. So we take the genitals out of it, and it's just partners working with each other to, for communication, for consent, all of those things. And then for men, we do work with men also, because men experience trauma,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
whether they're confused about their sexuality, just a lot of around men need to show up in a certain way. And so, there has to be this one type of sex, this one type of intercourse, but they want a different type of sex and a different type of intercourse, and then how to navigate through that. So, and all of it, regardless of what it is coming back to stories, right? The stories that we have created about ourselves, what's okay and what's not okay because of what's been put on us from family, society, and beliefs. So that's the root of it all, is just working with that. And my favorite part is helping people repattern their brain and their body through different touch sensations, because we don't know. We usually go to like the same type of touch. Like that's my go-to.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then when you try different types of touch, your body responds differently. Right. So maybe it's a little zapper.
Yes.
Right? A little zapper machine. And then you get a different response. You're just like, oh my gosh, I never experienced that. And then your brain wakes up, and then your body starts kicking out different types of chemicals. And you're having this crazy experience that you never had with somebody who's even touching your genitals. You're just like, this has never happened to me. And my genitals aren't involved, but it's just through different types of touch sensations. So exploring those with both genders is super fun. Yeah, I really like doing that.
So going back to what you were saying earlier about, pleasure and joy being at the highest frequency, and that we can derive so much pleasure and joy from really simple things. And then I know that, some of your work does intersect with kink practices and these kinds of things, which often, kink can be misunderstood as being about pain, which, I mean, it is about pain as well. But how do you see it? And this is always just a personal opinion, but how do you see the intersections of the, the high vibrating energy and pleasure and joy intersecting with kink? How do you sort of make sense of how those things go together for people who would be interested in bringing energy work and kink together?
Absolutely. So if you think about kink, and I'll use being tied up, right? So for somebody who is constantly in control, that's just a constant stress on their body, right? So you have the middle brain that's active, the fight or flight, because they're constantly trying to control. So when you take that away from them, the middle brain is soft, and then all of a sudden they enter the space of bliss, right? And so then that starts to shift the body, but you're tied up, you're blindfolded, all your power is taken away from you. And for some people, that's 100% bliss, because in their everyday life, they're in charge, they're taking control. They have so much on them. And it's just a way for their body to just completely surrender and let go. And that chemically, energetically, everything just shifts dramatically once you start to put in kink. And so whether it's being tied up, blindfolded, and even some type of pain sensation, right? So I know in our workshop together, we had those clothespins.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we put clothespins on our skin. And then when you take them off, you just get like this crazy rush of dopamine because your body's going to that area to soothe it. And it's so intense and it feels so good. And so when you think of clothespins, you're like, no, it doesn't feel good. You're just like, no, it's after the clothespins is what's going to feel good. And so it's just those different types of experiences to help the body rinse and cleanse, because every day we do 99.9% of the exact same thing, same thoughts, same emotions, same actions. And we get into this rut. And then those are the pathways in our brains that are just buried so deep, like they are grooved in there. And then when we introduce something different, it may be something small that takes you to pleasure and bliss so fast, because you're so into your daily routine and your thought process and all that. So to explore kink is wonderful because it will shift you, I think, faster than anything, because we don't practice kink every day.
No, well, some of us, but yeah.
I know, some of us.
I know, I'm kidding. But I think that's the thing. And because, so many of the Tantra and kind of, energetic sex people I know are like, they don't go near the kink thing. And then the kink some of the kink people are like, no, I don't want to do the kind of energy sex thing. But the similarities, or the crossovers even, are so, so rich, because both practices provide us with ways to, to quieten the mind, and to escape the kind of the mediocrity of the daily bullshit,
Yes.
and allow us to have these really extraordinary heightened experiences with sex, where we don't even have to take our pants off if we don't want to.
Oh my gosh, yes. There's so many different ways to access that place of bliss,
Mm.
but and like you said, people are closed down to it, right? Because it's not normal. It's not
Yeah.
what they've learned about. And like breath asms, right?
Mm.
So we did the circle breath,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have breath asms just because an orgasm is just energy moving through the body. It has nothing to do with your genitals
Right.
at all. And so just moving that energy. And so when people hear that, they're just like, I don't know what it is.
Mm.
And it doesn't make sense in my world. But once you try it, you'll start to understand, like, oh my gosh, like we have access to pleasure within our own selves
Right.
outside of any action if we just like tapped in,
Mm.
right? Because the body doesn't know what's real and what's not real. It has no idea. It connects with the mind. And so what the mind does, the body responds, right? So that's why you can have orgasms while you're sleeping. Men have wet dreams,
Yeah.
right? It's the mind. It has nothing to do with the body. The
Yeah.
body's just along for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once you start to tap into controlling those thoughts and controlling your breath and controlling your
Yeah.
expectations, then it starts to shift everything within the body.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that makes me think about so many of the women that I work with who say, that they can't have orgasms, conventional or otherwise. They just can't, because their minds are just so full of stuff that they're just, a bazillion thoughts in their head that they can't catch a thought. And they're just, I mean, we would call that, to a degree, we'd call it disembodied. They're just not in their bodies at all.
Yeah.
Everything's happening from the shoulders up. How would you work with somebody who just had, like, not like what we were talking about before with the pain and the numbness, but just someone who was so in their heads? What kinds of things would you suggest for them to start bringing the intensity down and into their bodies to help them control their mind?
So my favorite thing for that, and also for men who are so overly sensitized,
What do you
is
mean overly sensitized?
that it takes forever and it has to be dramatic stuff, right? Because
Ah,
right, so they watch a porn video and then they watch this type of video and they just keep like over sensitizing themselves.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
then it's like what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
Start from scratch. And that's the same with women who can't feel anything. So I like to have them close their eyes and just breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just run my hands over their bodies
Mm.
and I will ask them, where am I? Like, what part of your body
Oh,
am I on?
interesting.
Because
Yeah.
everything's energy, right? We give off energy before we even enter a room.
Yeah.
We have a torsion field around our heart that just moves in front of us before we even get there.
Mm.
And so once you start to reconnect with that feeling, that knowing of the body, then you start to drop down into the body.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're really trying to focus, like, okay, what can I feel?
Yeah.
Right. And then start to maybe do like a light feather, where are you feeling this light feather? And just making it gradually more and more onto their body. And what does that feel like? And tell me what item that I'm using. So they have to be so connected. They
Yeah,
can't be in their
nice.
mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Those practices, I mean, it's really endless, and in the
Yes.
process for me of making this podcast, when I'm talking to folks from all walks of, life on the sexual path, I'm talking to people who have, double, triple PhDs, and they're very kind of linear, cognitive, super, heady people, and then people who are very kind of esoteric and very spiritual, and then people who are real hardcore body people. There's so many ways that we can access the erotic and so much pleasure. And it just, I've been doing this work for 20 years and I still am like, oh my God, there's just still so much that we don't know. It's just
There
fabulous.
is. It is. And and we have a workshop tomorrow for women of color, and it's just an open dialogue about sex.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to do is talk about sex. Because if people can start to like, women are so different from men. Men, when they ejaculate, they're literally giving away their life essence, right? Like their life essence. And then so when you look at men and how they age, like your body needs that. And so then it's in the men's benefit to learn how to orgasm without ejaculating. And so it's practice. Don't give away your life essence. You give away your life essence when you make a baby, because that baby needs the life essence to come alive. But men are just throwing their life essence away.
Wow.
Like they're just, it's gone. And then they have a hard time aging like gracefully, because the body's like, I mean, you gave it all away. Women, on the other hand, so the life essence is in the kidneys and the kidney channel. Women give away their life essence when they have a baby, when they birth a baby, right?
Can we get our life essence back after we've finished ejaculating and having babies? Well, asking for a friend.
Women, that's the thing. Women, we can orgasm. We don't give away our life essence. We only give away our life essence when we have a baby.
Oh, I didn't have any babies, so that means I'm full of it.
There you go.
Full chock full of life essence.
There's some things that men can do, and it's like make sure that your head isn't exposed, right, in the wintertime, because you lose your life essence, and your back and the back of your neck, right? So this is all Chinese medicine, like bundle up, like that's where you lose your life essence. So if you are a male who's loved to ejaculate your entire life, start honing in that life essence, right? And there's certain herbs that you can take and shift your diet to help your liver do what it needs to do.
Right.
But for women, man, if women can understand the power of it, it's anti-aging, right? If you embrace that energy, your body uses it to regenerate your cells. Your liver thrives off of it. And so if you're locked down, if you're shut down with shame and guilt, and you're not letting that energy flow, and it doesn't mean that you have to go out and have sex. It's just shifting the mind around it to be like, no, this is my life essence. This is my source that is keeping me thriving and youthful. I mean, I know that's a big thing for ladies.
Yes. Well, I mean, you're a walking testament, because I think you're the hottest grandma I've ever met. So
thank you. We're up to I appreciate that. I will take that. We have 8 grandbabies now.
I mean, that's life essence all over your house. It's just clearly a testament to how much life essence you have been spraying across the generations.
That's right. And it's so funny too, because I mean, with my daughters, I'm teaching them how to be different, right? To not fall into how I was raised, that very strict way of thinking. I was raised strict Christian, so I had a lot of undoing to do.
Wow.
And it's so funny that both of my daughters now are in poly relationships.
Really?
They are, because me and my husband have an open marriage, and we've had for a long time. And it's just, I mean, and it's not for everybody, but it's just that.
But for those for whom it works really well.
It works. And I love hearing it. And I know they'll have their issues around it, and they have their stuff to work through, but it's like so hilarious now to see that my daughters are like.
And they obviously know that you and your husband have an open relationship too.
Oh yeah. We let all of the kids know Adam years ago, because we had 7 kids in the same house. And we didn't.
Wow. It's a very modern Brady bunch.
It's not like we had like crazy swinger parties or anything.
Right.
It's just like, this is who we are, and this is what we do.
Yeah.
So if you see your dad hanging out with so-and-so, don't freak out. He's not having an affair on me.
So let's just dive into that a little bit. I'm mindful of the time, and I don't want to overstep it. But I'm curious to be like, how you went from being a cop to a sort of sex goddess, basically, and then having a blended family where you grew up as a Christian, and then teaching your kids about sex and pleasure and embodiment and open relationships. And do you have any advice for parents and grandparents who are listening, who are just going, holy shit, she is living the life I want to live, and I've got a bazillion kids and this whole story of religious inheritance going on, and I want to drop it all and just I want to be like Duncan. How do they start?
First of all, get real with yourself. If this is something that you want, then start to see how to implement it within your life, right? And to really let go of those beliefs and those behaviors that aren't serving you, that are holding you down, that are keeping you in this box of this is what it needs to look like,
Yeah.
right? And so, and for an example, would be like, stop just doing missionary, like explore. If you want to say, I want to have a variety, then stop doing missionary. Let's start to push it up.
Yes.
So whatever that looks like to you. So it could be watching videos, it could be dipping your toe into partner swapping, whatever it is. So just be real with yourself. Don't just let it be like, this is what I want. Like start actually moving forward to really see if it's something that you want, because in your mind, it may sound amazing, but then when you actually start doing it, you'll find that you have a lot of stuff to work through, insecurities, jealousy, all of those things. So know that that is alive and real.
Yeah.
And then when you step into that space and you want to share it with your children, like, this healed me, and this is what me and your father or your mother are doing right now, and it's working for us. And we're not, so I just simply share. And it doesn't, like, my son knows, and he's just like, no, girl. Like,
so did you ever get that kickback from your kids, the pushback from your kids, just saying, you know, Mom, we don't want it, this is too much, I don't want to hear about what your dad get up to? Or
no, because I didn't really get into detail. I just totally told him that we like to spend time with other people, and we didn't get into any detail at all. And then because my oldest daughter's 31, and then the oldest son is 33. And so, so now me and my older daughter, like, we've gotten to details, just sharing it and being okay with it, and working through your own shame around it. That's the biggest key, is to be like, where I feel all this shame coming up, because you don't want to have shame and then blow it through your kids. Right?
And this is so important. Like, I mean, I just see generations of that happening. And when people kind of, you know, it's like we all get a bit stuck with it. Like, where do we put it? We got it from our parents and grandparents, and then even if we try not to, it ends up kind of smearing all over future generations as well. And it's not to say that this is anybody's fault necessarily, but it's everybody's responsibility. We all have to do our part in shifting culture and shifting society to having useful, meaningful conversations about sex, pleasure, relationships, and doing stuff outside the box, because
the box isn't working.
No one fits in the fucking box.
No, that's why people
nobody does.
If it worked, there wouldn't be so many affairs and so much craziness.
Exactly.
It's just accept who you are.
Yeah.
And live your life, live your best life. And one size isn't going to fit all, and be okay with that, because everybody's on their healing journey, and everybody's healing journey is going to look differently. Yeah. And that's why, like, we have naked yoga, because people want to be naked on their mat versus regular yoga. It just, everybody needs different things. Yeah. And so finding a place that's very supportive, which is huge, and that you can be nurtured and seen, right? Not shunned, but seen. Yeah. And this is what I like to do. And then do it. Yes. Like, whatever, that life is so short.
Right. Just get on with it and just do it.
Try it. Yeah. And if it's not for you, then just be like, you know, I tried it. It's not my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Ali, it's just so great. And, you know, with COVID having been how it's been for, you know, everybody all over the planet this year, one of the good things I think that's come out of this is that people have taken all of their work online, which means that people all over the world get to access you now. They don't have to come to Colorado. So how can people access you, and what have you got for public, you know, for the public that they can access online that would be helpful for folks to know?
You can access me on my website, and it's IamAliDuncan.com.
I'll put the links in the show notes as well.
So through my website, I'm on Instagram, Ali Duncan Be Seen, and then through my studio, which is Urban Sanctuary Denver. And I'm starting this whole new thing at the beginning of the year, which I'm super excited about, which is basically how to age gracefully through fitness, diet. I'm in school for Chinese medicine. And so it's just going to be this whole range of sensuality, fitness, yoga, mindset, energy work, and that you can access throughout the year through videos and then one-on-ones.
Amazing. So this is going to be your
Yeah.
new online offering that's coming up. Ali, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for taking time out of your day to come and discuss all of the juicy things, including how to be a hot grandma.
Well, thank you for having me.
Anytime. Oh my God, I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation with Ali Duncan as much as we enjoyed making it. And I really encourage you to check out her programs, especially if the things that she's talking about appeal to you. There's just really so many ways to access the erotic, from the energy work, the body work, the alternative mindset. Anything at all is going to be a helpful pathway to creating the kind of life, the kind of pleasure, the kind of sex life, the kind of relationships you want. It's really accessible to all of us, just with a little bit of attention and a little bit of effort. And speaking of effort, I really love it when I get your feedback about how much you love this podcast. So please, if you haven't already, go ahead and rate and review us on iTunes. Look for The Erotic Philosopher and let folks know how much you enjoy listening to the podcast and what you get out of it by leaving us a review. That boosts our visibility and helps other people find us and find access to all of the amazing philosophers that we've had as we approach the end of season 2. You can also follow us on social media at The Erotic Philos. That's PHILOS. We are on Instagram and Twitter. Catch up with the whole series of The Erotic Philosopher on my website. That's CindyDarnell.com, CyndyDarnell.com, where you'll find The Erotic Philosopher under the podcast tab. And also you can find ways to work with me, either individually as part of a couple or in a group, under my services or my online courses, pre-recorded and ready to go for you to take at home starting from today. It's been a pleasure having you here once again, and I look forward to catching up with you next time. Thanks for listening.